Imagine moving into your dream home, nestled between towering pines and beautiful scenery. Everything feels perfect, but as the night falls, an unsettling presence begins to make itself known. The Lee family found themselves gripped by an unexpected fear as their once cozy home became a place of anxiety and dread. This is the unsettling true story of the Black Forest hauntings. So sit back, get comfy, and enjoy tonight's Sleepless Night Tale. The Lee family was thrilled to move into their new home in the serene Black Forest in Colorado, a view shrouded by tall pine trees and breathtaking landscapes. It seemed like the perfect place to start fresh. John and Sarah Lee, along with their two children, Emily and Michael, were eager to begin this new chapter in their lives. The house itself was charming, with its rustic design and spacious rooms, and soon the family were unpacking and settling in. They felt a sense of peace and excitement. The children explored the vast backyard, while John and Sarah admired the beautiful views from the porch. But this calm would soon be disrupted by something that they could never have anticipated. It began subtly. One night, John awoke to find a strange sound coming from outside, and quietly he crept towards the window to see what it was. As he leaned in, gently brushing the curtain aside, he peered outside, and this is what he saw. Strange lights were flickering outside, casting eerie shadows on the walls. He brushed it off as the reflections could have been maybe a passing car or something like that. However, over time when this started happening more frequently, the rest of the family began to notice too. The family noticed that these strange lights seemed to move in an unnatural pattern, sometimes hovering in place before quickly darting away. But this was just the beginning of their worries. What came next was much, much stranger, and it involved objects moving by themselves. One morning, the family woke up to find that there was a chair that had been moved in the night. It was sitting in a completely different room from where they had left it. They were bothered by this, and the family's anxiety began to build as more activity started happening. Sarah would describe to John that she had seen picture frames tilted. While these small disturbances were unsettling, the Lees tried to rationalize them by suggesting that maybe it was the house settling or a draft from outside, while Sarah thought that it might just be the kids playing a prank or something. But this growing sense of unease began to creep into their daily lives a lot more in the days to come. This would come in the form of strange and disturbing dreams. And the most frightening part of all is that it was the kids who were experiencing this. Emily and Michael started having strange nightmares, waking up in cold sweats and crying. To make matters worse, they were often disturbed by Max, the family dog, barking at nothing and staring outside, only to whimper in fear and recoil at the front door. But there was nothing there. One evening, Sarah was alone in the kitchen, making a cup of tea, when out of nowhere, she heard a faint whisper coming from just behind her. She spun around, expecting to see one of the children, but to her shock and surprise, the room was completely empty. She was unnerved, to say the least, but she shrugged it off, thinking that she might have just imagined it. Maybe she was just tired, and that might have been the case had the whispers not continued. But there's more to this. Not only did the whispers continue, they began to grow louder and more insistent, to the point where Sarah even started questioning her own sanity. She confided in her husband, who reassured her that it was probably just the wind or something. Yet deep down, both of them felt the same sense of impending dread, swiftly creeping into their lives. One evening, things began to escalate to a new level of terror. Both John and Sarah caught a glimpse out of the corner of their eye of a shadow figure standing at the edge of the room, and just as quickly as they had noticed it, it vanished into thin air, leaving the family in an eerie, stunned silence. They looked at each other, all thinking the same thing, but too petrified to speak. Unfortunately for the Lee's family, the uninvited guest would make itself known once again. In the weeks that followed, these apparitions became more frequent, always out of the corner of their eye. A vision of ghostly figures would appear and then disappear, always just out of reach. This led to an overwhelming, uncomfortable feeling of always being watched, and the family found themselves checking over their shoulder, doubting what was real. The sense of being watched became too much, and one night, Emily ran to her mother, claiming to have seen an old woman wearing old-fashioned clothing standing by her bed at night. The occurrences were so frequent that it got to the point where she would spend most nights too scared to sleep in her own room, and she would run to her parents for the night. Michael, on the other hand, reported hearing whispers too, just like his mother, and he told his parents that the voices were coming from inside the walls, like the house itself was speaking to him. This unimaginable existence only intensified from there to the only thing that could make this even more terrifying: physical contact. The family began to experience physical sensations. Unexplainable cold spots would appear in the middle of a warm room, and they would feel a sudden chill going down their spine, even when the heating was on. One night, John even felt what he described as a hand that grabbed him on the shoulder, only for him to turn around and find that there was no one there. The children were utterly terrified, and their schoolwork began to suffer. The Lee's family knew they had to do something, but what could they do? They were at a loss, and no one in the community believed them. They started to alienate themselves for fear of being called crazy. Determined to find answers and prove that they weren't mad, John began setting up cameras all over the house, and the footage that they captured was chilling. You could see in the footage strange lights that were dancing in the hallways, objects that seemed to move on their own, and occasionally an interference that was kind of like a shadow that curiously crept and lurked into the corner of the frame. The family shared these videos with paranormal investigators who were both fascinated and baffled. The evidence was undeniable. Something unexplainable was happening in the house, and they had many visitors trying to see these occurrences firsthand for themselves. Investigators would conduct several sessions using various equipments to detect paranormal activity. They recorded EVPs, which are electronic voice phenomena. These sessions would pick up faint voices that could be heard responding to their questions. The family learned that their house was built on a land that had a dark history. This land had once been the site of a tragic event. In the late 1800s, a family had lived here, and their story ended in a mysterious and violent way. The details were murky, but it was clear that something terrible happened. The investigators believed that the spirits of the past were still lingering, unable to move on. They advised the Lee's family to perform a cleansing ritual, hoping to bring peace to the restless spirits. They gathered around under instruction from spiritual advisors and conducted the ritual, burning sage and reciting prayers to help whoever was trapped here to move on to the next life. Fortunately for the Lee's family, their ordeal seemed to be over. The activity eventually subsided, but the experience left a lasting impact on them. Yes, the Lee's family did move on, but these haunting memories stayed. The family struggled for many years with recurring nightmares long after the activity had stopped. John and Sarah often reflected on their time in the house, wondering if they would ever truly understand what they experienced. Emily and Michael, now older, did occasionally share their stories with close friends, but each retelling took a lot out of them and brought back the fears of those nights in the Black Forest. The family eventually decided to move to a new home, leaving behind the memories of their haunted house. They never truly healed and were left with the scars of what they experienced. The Lee story became a local legend, attracting paranormal investigators and enthusiasts for years to come. The house itself is still there today, and the strangest part, the new residents that had moved in after the Lee's family also reported strange occurrences, almost exactly like what the Lee's family experienced. Which really makes me wonder, did cleansing the house really help? And were these just new entities that had invited themselves afterwards? Or was whatever possessed the house simply lying in waiting for its next unsuspecting victim? Perhaps we will never know, but it's clear that the legend of the Black Forest has left a haunting legacy and impacted many lives. And the answer to this unsolved mystery is still out there, waiting to be discovered.
Sleepless night tales, wee.
Thanks for listening to my latest story. I hope you enjoyed it. If you know of any scary stories that you'd like me to cover, leave a comment and let me know. If you want more stories like these, remember to subscribe so you don't miss my future uploads. Until next time, good night.